Hey guys, Darren Carr here, coach of Wise Ocean Pods, and welcome back to another episode of our round preview series. If you haven't seen this series before, we go through the most trade in and trade out targets for the round, and also run through what my team's doing and give some good captain options for the week. But yeah, let's sort of get into it, I guess. So before I get into the trade in and trade out targets, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some strategy now that we're sort of through the early buys as such, now being round 7, we're back to best 22, and just sort of giving a bit of a warning as such, that the mid-season buys are coming. There is only 5 more weeks of trades between, obviously after this week there's 5 more trades that we're going to get between now and the mid-season buys. So it's a good time to start sort of monitoring how your team is structuring up during that sort of period. So what I like to do at this sort of time is get a good buy planner. If you don't have one, there's quite a few out there that have used in the past. So I personally create my own. It's not super hard. It's just realistically just listing the players that you're going to be missing on a certain week, so that around 12 to around 15. And then I like to also look at how my team is going to structure up for each of those weeks. So removing those guys that are out, and then just looking at how many primos, how many mid prices, and how many rookies am I relying on each week. Obviously, this is subject to change over the next 5 weeks or 6 weeks, however you want to look at it. But it's just a good indication of how your team is structuring up. If you can identify pretty early that you've got too many primos on one line, that you need to start focusing on other lines as such, or focusing on some other rookies in those. Start focusing on primos in other buys. Let's just look how my buys, so I can explain a little better. So if I just go to round 12, so just using the AFL website, if you don't pay for this, then you have to do this a bit manually, but it's definitely doable. So I like to look at my primos first of all, because obviously the rookies are a bit here and there. You're probably not expecting them to stay around for too much longer, right? So you expect them to be gone by then. So looking at it, I have Sheasel in Whitfield. 2 in the same line is probably not too bad in my thoughts. 2 or 3 is probably max in each line, because it can be quite hard to cover, especially probably not in the defence as much, because we do have a lot of DPP, but we'll have to see how that structures up when we get there. So 1, 2, then I've got Heaney and Power that I'll count as primos as such. I'll count Fisher as a mid-pricer, because at the end of the day, if we get to his buy, then I think I'll be pretty happy to flick him off if he is not improving his scoring to what we sort of expect around that sort of 85 zone. But 4, and they're pretty spread out, so 2 on each line. Pretty happy with that. Let's move on to round 13. Obviously, I only have the 2 here in Hayden Young and Butters. I do expect both of them to be holds. Fife will be gone by then, and you'd expect Charlotte to be gone there too. With the round 13 buy, obviously it is the best buy to target for your primos in the coming weeks, because there's obviously only 2 teams on the buy. So we saw a lot last year that this is obviously the most beneficial to really target these guys, because there's only 2 teams, so you're not going to have as many players missing, and it kind of evens the load out over the buy structure as such. So I'm looking to target Connor Rosie and a Sarong in the near future, just looking at how I can sort of facilitate that. Moving on to round 14, so I've got a few more here. So I've got 4 again, so I've got Martin, Merritt, Gawn and Flanders, but really nice that I have them all on different lines. So I shouldn't have any issues there, and quite a few of them have DPP, so I can shift them around if I need be. Throw them in the midfield if I need to, or whatever. And then quickly on to round 15. Again, very similar. I have 2 on this one, so I probably could target a few more of these guys in my buy structure. Obviously, Marcus Bontempelli and Marshall are the only ones staying. I do expect Bono will be gone in the near future. So it's just one of those things that I like to keep an eye on. It doesn't need to determine your decisions right now, but if you discover that you maybe have 6 or 7 sort of primos across this in one particular buy, I'd say that's sort of your max. You don't want to go over 7. I went back and looked at my history of last year, and I didn't have any more than 7 on one buy at a time. And I couldn't specifically say what if that was on one certain line or like I spread out evenly through the team. But yeah, I wouldn't suggest anything over sort of 7 primos in the one buy, because that really restricts that buy for you, and you could really struggle, and it could hurt your scoring potential because you're relying on too many rookies in that round. It's a little bit hard to say if we can rely on those rookies at this point in time, because we don't know who's going to come through. More than likely we won't have these guys because we'll be trading them out as we sort of go. So it's more, pretty much what you want to be doing from here onto into those buys is racing to get all your rookies off field. Try and field a full 22 of premiums. Last year it was a little bit quicker. We got there a bit earlier. This year I'm not so confident that we'll get there, even though at the moment I'm currently running 5 rookies, and I know a few other people are running 4, and I'm actually not running too many mid prices. I think I've got 4 in Yo, I've got Bonner, and I've got 2 in the forward line in Fisher and a Fife. And Fisher's probably a borderline whether you keep him or not, but I think he could go in the end of the day. But again, we only have 5 more weeks of trade. So you got 10 trades essentially from end of this weekend to the buy structure. So you realistically want to try and get as many of these guys off your field as possible. So try and avoid sideways trading as much as possible. Obviously, we're probably going to cop some bullets between now and then, as some people saw this week with a Tom Stewart, with a I'll call Jackson a pretty much a bullet, because he is pretty much scoring as a rookie. So you need to get him off, but yeah, that's pretty much the goal between now and then, which is pretty obvious, but I just thought I'd remind people that I've maybe sort of stuck in this mind of, okay, let's just not worry about anything now that we're in the best 22s. But in saying that, we are in the best 22s now, so we really need to rely on our rookies to, score well for us, because every single score counts, which is obvious, but again, just reminding. So you really want to field those rookies that are reliable. So I'd probably rank these in terms of, I'd go Roberts being the sort of top tier. So Roberts, Sharp, Reed, and a Closey, I'll say, are probably top tier in you want to field them guys. That's pretty obvious. In the second tier, I'll probably put a Graham. I'll put a Dempsey, a McKercher, a Sanders if you're still holding those 2. That's probably where I would finish with that. Maybe a Wilson can be thrown in there as well. He's been scoring pretty well if you still have him. And then anyone sort of below that is probably just a bench only. I would probably wouldn't go and put them on your field unless you can sort of emergency them and loop them on if they score well. So yeah, it's important to really just nail those rookie picks and see if you can loop, then that's obviously ideal. This week for me particularly, and I probably should touch on it a bit later, but I'm looking to emergency house this on the Wednesday night, that is, and because it's such a weird fixture this weekend, I know it's probably going to be very difficult for more casual players, where we've got some teams on a Tuesday night, and then we're not going to know 4 teams until the Thursday night, which is after sort of 2 teams have already played, and the third one won't be too far away. So, and we won't even know the full extent of the Sunday games until sort of Friday night. So it's a very tough, and it is very hard to trade around those sort of team announcements, because if you want to lock in your trade sort of, in the first game, you're looking at a Dacos. He's locked out in that second game in the Anzac Day at 2:15. So before you even know anyone else is named. So what happens if we do have a bullet and someone misses and you can't then change your trade? You're just stuck with him. And same with the rookies. If a rookie is rested, we already know that Harley Reid has been rested, so we can luckily make some plans around that. But yeah, if we have one of these rookies not named, then how can we could still plan to get them out. So you could trade these guys now if you know they're out, whereas if you lock your trades in, then you're kind of stuck and you can't make those changes, and you could be really hurt that way. So it's really it's unfortunate for coaches that are trying to bring in those sort of early round guys, like I know Gorn plays tomorrow night. A few people bringing him in for Jackson, so that locks one of those trades in. And then you've got Garcia who plays on Friday night, so that's not too bad in the end of the day. But you've got to be really vigilant that on the Friday night you need to make sure that, okay, my players are actually named and they're on field, and yeah, you got to be confident that they're not going to be the sub as well, because that's a whole nother challenge this year. But that's all I wanted to really say for a bit of structuring and a bit of planning forward. So I think we'll just move on from now. So let's quickly look at the most trade out targets first. Oops. There we go. So Zach Williams is number one. I think he is a must go, or not a must go. I think he needs to go. I think more than likely he'll play. He's a test for, obviously to play. He's got to prove his fitness. So at the end of the day, I think it was a corky to his sort of calf. I think that's what they came out with. Not to Achilles. Or actually, they did actually name it as Achilles. I don't know. It's very weird what's actually come out, and it hasn't been super clear on what his injury is as such and why he got subbed. He just copped a knock, and they weren't risking it, which is what we sort of expected from a guy like this. At the end of the day, I think he's done enough to. He got the over 100k, so you'd probably think it's a pretty decent pick. He's put up some good scores in those first opening months, so you'd be pretty happy. But at the end of the day, probably hasn't scored at the potential that we sort of expected from him. And a rookie, really, at the end of the day, wasn't too far off. But at the end of the day, we didn't have that many defender rookies to play with, so I think he was a pretty. What am I doing? He was one that we had to grab. Oops, wrong one. So I think he's a great option to go. I'm looking to get off him myself. Riley Sanders is another one that probably needs to go. Has a super high break even at 83 and could even be the sub again. I know a lot of people are quite confident that he won't be, but I was also confident last week that he wouldn't be the sub either. So really disappointed that he now has pretty much. And the other thing with him being the sub is that they actually played really well. Like, they obviously dominated Saints and got a pretty convincing win. So they may keep the same formula, and he's the sub again, and he's going to drop even more coin. So he's losing coin very quickly now. Obviously lost to 18k last week, scoring the 22 when his break even was 50. If he does that again, he could drop anywhere from 40 to 50k, and that pretty much ruins him. I know he has the forward status now after the DPPs came out, and that's obviously a great position if you held him. But he's in a tough matchup. You'd have to be pretty confident that he isn't going to be a sub, and that he's going to, score quite convincingly back to the 80s and high 80s to get his cash generation going again. Because at the end of the day, he's 39 and 22. I own his price cycle now. I'm going to stay there for the next sort of 3 to 4 weeks. So I personally would be moving him on. This is what rookies are for. You use the cash that's on their head to get an upgrade. So I'd be moving him on. Massimo, very similar boat. Got subbed out on that 33. Really disappointing at the end after we all sort of jumped on him early on. Has been one of the worst trades in recent memory for sure. Super high break even. Going to lose a lot of cash. And there's no certainty to even be in the side, to be honest. Obviously got subbed out. So what does that really say about him? 50%, not even 50% time on ground, and we saw that sort of decrease in his time on ground over the last sort of 3-4 weeks. So I'd definitely be looking to move him on. He's got a lot of cash on his head, so it wouldn't be too much. Sort of, you can put a Sanders and a Massimo together to get up to an 800k player, if not a little bit more. So I think that's a great trade. Jackson is an interesting one for most people who started him. Obviously, he's been quite a decent pick to start. Probably not as good as what everyone expected, but now he is starting to go heavily backwards with Sean Darcy inside. And this is sort of what you would have expected. We all knew he was coming back sort of around this round 6, round 7. You've probably been pretty lucky that he's only coming this late on, and you've got a decent run at him as it could have been, 2 or 3 weeks ago, realistically. But he's put up some pretty decent scores for you in those sort of first month or so. Dropped off in the last 2, which has been pretty unfortunate. But now is losing a heap of cash, and probably if he scores a 50 or a 60, which is what this was sort of looking like, well, 60 is what he scored, but yeah, that could have been, a lot closer to a 50 because I think he scored the late goal in that one. That's going to hurt you a lot. That's 70, I'll say 70 points, but it's not really. Below his break even, that's looking close to maybe 50k, if not a little bit more. So that really hurts, and I think he's a priority to get off over the sort of the likes of if a Williams doesn't play, you could probably hold one of those guys, say a Tom Stewart or a Williams, if they don't get up for the game. Obviously, Stewart is out we'll touch on him a little bit later, but I think he's probably more of a priority trade because it is, at the end of the day, it is a cash game, and you need to prioritise that cash, and losing 50k on one player can really hurt you, and you should just use that cash on him right now to get up to that top line guy. I still consider it a bit of an upgrade because at the end of the day, he wasn't a keeper. You can get a keeper from him, whether that's going up to a Dacos in the defensive line, or going up to a Bontempelli or a Rosie or a Steele, or one of those sort of guys. That's not too far of a jump, and hopefully on the other side of the trade, with a lot of double downgrading, you can still get an upgrade on the other side as well. Or you could even sideways trade him to McRae. I know it's probably not the most luxurious trade, but McRae is probably a lot closer to being that top 6 forward than a Jackson going backwards heavily, and his price is going in the right direction. So I think he's probably one, if not two, of the top priority to get off. Tom Stewart is unfortunate for owners that have him, but I think it's a bit of a luxurious position now that he's obviously hasn't been doing what we sort of expected or so far in the season. Obviously put up 2 pretty decent scores in what was a game where they just fed him, and then a really poor matchup. A really good matchup for him in Hawthorn. So I think it's a blessing in disguise for those owners that can jump off him now and get up to, those top line guys like Dacos is pretty similar. Or if your defense is already set and you've got too many defenders like most people, you can move him on to a top line midfielder. Like I said, there's plenty of names there that people are looking to bring in, so I think it's not too far of a leap from him there. And unfortunately, he's probably going to just miss the 1, but there is also a potential that he could miss 2, just given how much of a borderline. I think he missed out on losing 2 by 1 day, so does Geelong be more cautious with him and just rest him for 2 weeks, and that could really hurt you. If you think it's going to be 2 weeks, then I'd absolutely trade. If you think it's going to be 1 week and you can sort of improve your team on the other side and you can have him back, that's probably another way I could look at it. But at the end of the day, he's got a massive break even and he's going to lose a lot of coin from here, and he's not that sort of the hold guy that you sort of expected him to be. So I think it's time to move off of him. Fisher is another interesting one for me. I said in my review series, obviously with the news that Sheasel may be thrown up forward a little bit more, is going to open up some more points for a Fisher, more than likely. Whether it's significant or not, I don't think it's going to be too crazy. Obviously, you got the likes of Kircher that could be thrown back there, Bradley Scott, who's a few others back there. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but yeah, there's plenty of other guys out back there that probably take more of the benefit rather than a Fisher. So with that being said, I do think he's a bit of a hold and wait and see how that sort of eventuates. Do I expect it to be an immediate change? I don't think so. I think Sheasel sort of sticks it out in the defence line for at least sort of the next month, and then we'll start to eventuate a little bit more into the CVAs. I don't think he'll be thrown forward as much. I think he will be utilised in the midfield as sort of that taller midfield. I think they're really looking for that sort of guy. They don't really have that taller midfielder. We've got LDU, sort of their bully, and then you got Wardler, who's very similar in stature, and then you've also got a Power. They're all very similar in stature, in my opinion. They really need to just throw a few more different type of body types in there. We see a lot of the time you need that tall, lanky sort of midfielder in there to be above and beyond a lot of the other midfielders. So I think he will definitely complement their midfield, and I think he can still score quite well. Probably not as well as he has been in the defense. Obviously, there's not as many cheap +6s. He can get plenty of disposals like we've seen, and can tackle quite well, but I don't think he'll be quite the 120 player that he has been so far this season. So went on a bit of a run and Sheasel there, but Fisher, I definitely think he's a hold, but at the end of the day, if you manage to avoid all the bullets in the previous 5 guys that we just discussed, then I could support moving him on, because he is probably going in the wrong direction now, and it's not too much of a far stretch to get him up to sort of those top line players, especially with a lot of people struggling this week for cash. Lane Dersman absolutely needs to go. His break-even is massive now, and more than likely won't see the ball too much. So use a coin on your head, on his head if you can. He's a good rookie fix-up, and you can use that 190k pretty nicely. McCurch is an interesting one, obviously with the news of Sheasel, as I said for Fisher. Do we hold him? Do we trade him? I'm in the camp that we just trade him. At the end of the day, he's now going backwards with his price, and if you can use his cash to get him up to those underpriced primos, then that's sort of the way you should go and get in better rookies making some more money. But at the end of the day, he is underpriced for what he could go at, which we have seen to be, those low mid 70s to even to a 90 when he's in the right role. It's just he needs to go back there. I'm not confident he gets thrown back there just yet. Obviously, I said Sheasel may not have the immediate effect, but we'll wait and see on that one. He was playing a bit more half forward in these games, so still put up the respectable 64, so it's not too bad. He'd probably need a couple of those to really get his cash going in the right direction again. Hoping for the best that the owners can have a big score and then really generate that cash again for them. Because at the end of the day, he could still make another 150k if he can go back to his 170 ways. No, not 170, 70, mid 70s. Obviously picked up the defender status as well, which is handy, but at the end of the day, I think we have a lot of defender rookies that we can field over them. So you got the likes of Closey, you got Graham, and you've also got Roberts in that sort of realm. So I don't think that really is too much of a factor for most people. Oliver Dempsey is one that could probably go as well. I'm probably looking to jump off him next week just because with the news that Reed is out, I'll probably have to rely on a Dempsey this week. Unfortunately, I'm going to loop with Garcia first. Hopefully he does well enough and I don't have to field a Dempsey, but with a tougher matchup. But we'll just wait and see. So I'm personally holding, but if you obviously have someone that can you can field in his place and can put up a very similar sort of respectable score and sort of a 60 to 70, then by all means, he's got plenty of money on his head and can be a good avenue to get that next guy that you're looking for. In saying that, I think he'll probably be the most traded out player next week, in my opinion. Lazaro, people are jumping off. Obviously, has been the sub for the last 2 weeks and is now going backwards. He's made a little bit more coin over the last couple of weeks, so which is nice for owners, but he is one that can go, especially if you're looking to bring in a Garcia. Obviously, one of those forward rookies needs to go, so he's one that could definitely be on the chopping block. Jack Clark as well needs to go. Burning cash, pretty straightforward there. Blake Howes is an interesting one. I'm personally using him as a looping option this week. So obviously plays that Wednesday night. So I want to see how he scores because I do think he'll score quite well as Salem is still out and they do have pretty good matchups in the next 2 weeks. So let's have a quick look. So we'd class him as a general defender. And he's placed in Melbourne. So he's got Richmond this week, which is really a pretty good matchup. Into 2 harder ones. So personally, I'm holding him this week. He's got a low break even, a lowish break even that I think he could pretty much break that and not lose too much coin. And I also like the flexibility of having a few more defenders in my team so I can throw a few more people back and forth. Whereas previously, early on in the season, that was pretty struck with I could only bring in a defender if I traded this guy out. So I don't mind having him there, and hopefully he can generate some more cash with the likes and go back to his sort of 60 ways. We'll have to wait and see. But again, if you want to trade him out, he's got some good money on his head and very similar to those other guys. So I do like that. Sexton, amazing that still people are trading him out, but I guess he's been sitting on their pine for the last, month or so. Well, 3 weeks. No, month, yeah. Needs to go. Toby Green's been suspended, so his time to jump off. He's also been pretty shocking. Maybe not in the last sort of 2 prior, but yeah, last week. And yeah, he's known for dropping these low scores. What has he lost? He's lost over 100k for the season, so that's been a bad pick if you started with him, unfortunately. Caleb Windsor is the perfect example that can sort of go. Again, very similar to a House, very similar priced, very similar break even. Isn't going to make a huge amount of coin from here, so could go if it gets you to a guy. Wilson is probably 1 week too early on a Wilson, given that his break even is probably a little bit lower with a 30. But again, has Port Adelaide, so it could be a bit of a tough matchup. Do expect to sort of trade him next week for sure. But at the end of the day, go early on these rookies if they get you to the guy that you're looking for. If you need that extra 4 to 50k from a Wilson over a Windsor or a Howes, use that 50k to get up to the player you want. Yeah, all I need to say there. Jordan, what did he end up scoring last week? A 73, so wasn't too bad for owners. Actually made some money, and his break-even stayed the exact same. Again, probably not the worst one to hold if you really need to. He's got a good matchup again this week, so if you don't want to trade him out, or you've got some other priorities, then he's one you could probably hold. But yeah, he's got some good money on his head and could be used. Seth Campbell, obviously coming back from the bye, still has a pretty low break even in 35, so I think you probably could hold him, but does have some tougher matchups coming with Melbourne. Probably won't get as many goals, but we'll have to wait and see with that one. I'm personally holding this week, just with a few other priorities, but hopefully I can move him on in next sort of week and a bit when he sort of maxes out in price. But it's really just sort of making a plan to get off all these sort of guys that have maxed out in price and getting on to the next guy. But there's not a whole lot of rookies that are coming through, unfortunately. So have to wait and see. Wardlaw obviously got the rested last week and should come back this week. Got a pretty high break even. Sort of hovering in that 600k, so I think he can go as well. People trading up Marshall is an interesting one. Obviously has the pretty high break even, but still has an amazing run. I still think he's one to hold, and he's a hold for the year. Unless there's a clear role change, which there wasn't. He just had a poorer game and got rested in the sort of the last quarter. So, yeah, I wouldn't be moving off him at all. Cadman can go. He's got a good price. Probably 1 week too early again. Probably look to get that break even up to what he's actually averaging. So that's sort of a general rule of thumb. Whatever they're averaging, if it's anywhere near there, then it's time to go. But he's a good 25 points under that. So probably 1 week too early, in my opinion. Just a couple more here. There's not too many fantasy relevant people. Comden, yep, I'd be moving off him, even though I do expect him to be thrown backwards again. It's pretty much stopped all his cash generation. He's got a 39 break even. So we'll probably go up a little bit more on cash, but not to the extent that you sort of expected when you picked him up 2 weeks ago. Sicily, if you still had him, needs to go. He's been dropping a shit ton of cash. 200k in the first month of footy is ridiculous. Bailey Williams is Zach Bailey is injured for the next 4 to 6 weeks. So yeah, Euland has been pretty bad from my thoughts. Well, from a footy standpoint, it's been scoring okay, 50s before obviously a bad one on the weekend. Did he get subbed? No, he didn't. No. But yeah, time to go for him. Doesn't have a huge amount of coins, so it's a bit difficult. People that held Salem last week through the bye, yep, can move off him. Nat 5 can go as well, even though he did have a pretty good score on the weekend and does have a pretty nice matchup in the next two. I'm looking to hold him until he sort of drops that stinker again. And finally, Toby Green. Toby Pink can go. Yeah, sorry, just saw the colours and saw Toby Green. So that's all I'll say for the trade out players. So if I had to summarise who are the main trade out targets, I'd definitely go Stewart, number one, obviously out for this week indefinitely, and he's going to lose a lot of coin on his return. I've got Jackson, number two. He's going to lose more than likely 50k this week, if not more. I think he's a priority to get off because 50k is a lot and is going to really hurt you. Number three is Massimo. His break even is 90 odd, and I'm not sure he even makes it into the squad. And he could be the sub again after they won. So I think it's time to move him on, use that coin on his head to get that to the top guy. And then I've also got these two rookies in Sanders and McKercher. If you held either one of them or you still have both of them, I'd probably be going Sanders before McKercher, just given that higher break even. He's definitely going to be losing some coin unless he plays the full game and really scores quite well. But there's no guarantee of that. So it's going to take a little bit more for them to turn that around. So I'd be looking to move him on. And then I've thrown Zach Williams at 6 just because I know these are the sort of really high guys that need to be moved on. And I obviously spoke about Zach Williams. He's number one traded out player. So everyone's sort of in the same boat there. I'm looking to move him on this week. Luckily, don't have Stewart, Jackson, Massimo, and Sanders. I got McKercher and Williams, so that's sort of where my trades are. I've also thrown in, if you don't have any of these bullets, or you maybe have one and you're looking to trade out who's on the other trade. You could look at a Dempsey. Obviously, he can go because he's pretty much maxed out price now. Won't make too much from here unless he has a big breakout, which is highly unlikely. Fisher's probably another one as well, just given what he produced on the weekend. If realistically, if he's your last sort of guy that you're not confident with, move him on. It's not much of a step to get to that next guy. And I've also thrown Wilson in there because he won't make a huge amount of coin from you. Hopefully that summarises that. Let's move on to the main trade in targets. Alright, so we've got Hugo Garcia, if I could get that name right, is a great rookie target for this week. Is probably one of the only rookie targets, unfortunately. I know a lot of people that traded in him last week are struggling this week with a rookie downgrade, and sort of forcing their hand a little bit to do a bit more of a mid-price mayhem, where you're picking up two mid-prices because you don't want to pick up a dead rookie as such. But if you're looking for another rookie and you're not confident with the ones that sort of have a low break even, you're talking like a Durham, or you're talking a Biggie, even a Latifi from Richmond, then you probably could just grab a what's his name, a Manor from Geelong, as he's not too far away, really cheap. Can provide a good looping option as well, as now we won't have that luxury of having to buy players to be looping with. So that can maximise your rookies on field. But yeah, I think Garcia is a great option to trade in this week. Obviously, great break even, shown scoring potential of 50 to 70. It's a bit of a tough matchup this week, so I probably wouldn't be fielding him just yet. I would like to see it a bit more consistent. So, like I said, I'm looping him on this week, so he's going to be an emergency. Have a look at him. If he scores well, then obviously Reed comes on field, take the score. If not, then I'm probably running with a Dempsey for after him. A line probably is a 60 or maybe even a 50 with Dempsey with a harder matchup. Probably decide when we get there, but if it's around that mark, I'll probably take that. Jack McRae is another interesting one. There's very, very different opinions on what people think he will do. Obviously, he is a great price at nearly 700k. Break even's now in the right direction, so he'll be start increasing in price. He's priced at 79, so really cheap for what we think he can do. I'm only expecting him to be sort of a 90 guy. I did like the role he played on the weekend, where he sort of he took that Sanders role where sort of started on the half forward if he didn't start in the CBAs, and floated to the stoppage and was able to get amongst it and get those tackles, and was even able to spread and get some marks on the outside. But wouldn't be expecting anything near this. I'm hoping he can produce just those mid 80s, if not closer to mid 90s would be ideal. And can hold down this role. Obviously, you're not just trading in Macrae, you're trading in Bevo, and we've seen what Bevo has done in the last couple of weeks with Bailey Dale and Sanders being subbed out. But he did have pretty high praises of Jack Macrae with his role that he played on the weekend, and pretty much praised him that this is the role that we foresee him in, and hopefully that sticks. I don't see that changing, so is a pretty good pickup in my opinion. Has a great run, as we've spoken about with Bontempelli. Really two good ones there, and a couple more down here as well. So, doesn't mind the contested ones either. So, I think it's a good pickup if he's the only one you can get to. There's a few others in that sort of price range, which we can probably touch on a bit later, but we'll keep going down the list for now. Sam Walsh is a great trading target as well. I think he'll probably get a bit of an instant trade reward here, with the Geelong Cats being one of the easiest matchup for midfielders. So could even be a captain option if you're keen on him. Definitely has two good ones the next 2 weeks. Making some decent coin. Is still quite cheap for what he can do. But obviously the concern is his back injury. We've seen it before where it can flare up again. So, but at the end of the day, you can only be as good as your last game, and he looks really healthy at the moment. So, hopefully that back injury stays away and he can have a full run at it. And I think he could push those top sort of 8 midfielders for sure. Moving on, Nick Dacos is probably one I'd probably compare him to, being that 30k cheaper. If you can choose between a Walsh or a Dacos, I'd be probably going with the safer option in a Dacos. Obviously, no injury history. Break even is a little bit higher, but I don't expect him to get too much cheaper at the end of the day. What he dropped 21k last week, so he probably only dropped maybe a 10k this week, if that. So realistically, you don't want to just try and pick them up at the bottom of their price cycle. That's ideal, but it's very unrealistic. If you're trying to pick him up next week, then there's every chance that you have some bullets and you can't pick him up, or there's plenty of other factors where you might not pick him up, or he has a stinker week and then you push him out another week, and then it's one of those things. I'd just be jumping on him with the security of that he's going to be top 2 in defence. Sam Flanders, if you don't have him still, I think he is a great option. Has a pretty good run coming up. Probably not for defenders, I don't think. I looked at it as a general sort of... let's have a quick look here. Where am I? So it has West Coast this week, Brisbane next, and then has a couple tougher ones. So it's not a hugely great run. It is much better for midfielders, but not for him as such. But I think with his role that he has, I think he is great an option, and he's clearly sort of top 2, top 3 in that forward line. Caldwell is one that's been getting a lot of traction and a lot of attention this week, but I am quite negative on him, and I don't mean to shit on him too much. He is a great fantasy player, and we know what he can score given the opportunity. It's just, like I said, he is behind so many other guys, and he is very unlikely to keep this role. We've got Setterfield coming back now in the next 2, and you've got a Perkins coming back next week as well. So it's a very short-term play. We've obviously seen that they prefer a Parrish, Merritt, and a Setterfield in there as their sort of main 3. And then you got Durham and a Perkins, who's also run through there quite heavily this year. And then Caldwell's probably that 6th there as well. So definitely part of that second group, but is still probably behind, a Durham and a Durham however you want to say his name, and then Perkins, in my opinion. So while he has been scoring quite well while those guys are out, it's very short term, and I don't expect it to continue post when they get in. So I'd personally be fading him. A bit of a trap, for my opinion, and he's really pricey. Heaney, I've spoken so many times. Obviously, people are just getting fed up if you don't have him. People are just getting fed up of not owning him, and he's going super well. Obviously, he has a good matchup this week. Big watch on if Parker comes into the squad and see where he plays. It's an interesting one. At the end of the day, is he a top 6 forward anyway in that forward line? It's going to probably get plenty of the ball down there, given that Sydney Swan are doing quite well, and hopefully can maintain some of his role in the midfield. So probably just go on for the assumption of that and maybe pick him up if you can. The only problem is he is so expensive at this point. Ideally you want to search for that sort of value at the moment. Zorko is very similar to Heaney, but you've got the added risk of an injury. Obviously, being the way he is, I don't want to talk too much about it because we've spoken about it about probably 3 or 4 weeks in a row now. But I still think he is a pretty good pickup, as he is top 4, top 3, however you want to look at it, in that forward line. Been scoring quite well in that role. It's just, keep an eye on teams. If McKenna comes back into the team, just keep an eye on him. They may even look to change a few things up in Brisbane because they have been quite poor in the opening sort of month and a half, really. Closely, people are still trading him in. If you don't have him, that's great. Probably a bit late, but it's still under. He's just over 400k now, so it's a bit pricey from my opinion. But I'd probably be going with a Graham over him, just because of the extra 60k or whatever, 40k it was. It's an interesting one. I usually don't like paying over 400k or even over 350 for rookies, but this week's a bit of a unique position because we don't have a lot of those. We don't have many downgrade options, so maybe you're going with a closey and then getting a cheaper sort of premium, with a lot of people doing double downgrades, but I still think they're great pickups. At the end of the day, got to make a lot of coin from here. Max Gawn, like I said, I think most people are jumping off a Jackson and going to him, so I think that's a great trade-in. He hopefully will give you a bit of an instant trade reward this week with a big captain score if you're looking to VC, which I currently am. Jordan Dawson is an interesting one again. Obviously had been like a yo-yo in the last 2 weeks where went 60 and went 155. So if you really ignore his 60 score, he's been going quite well. Like you'd give that a tick. Like 131, 112, and 155 is pretty awesome. It's just the concern with his role. Obviously, what happens with Matt Crouch coming back in? If you're a firm believer that he's going to maintain his midfield status, midfield role, and be closer to that 80, then absolutely grab him in. But if you think he's going to drop closer to sort of that 60%, then it could be a bit of a flag that maybe he's not the target that we once thought he was, with the likes of Sligo and Rankin coming into that midfield mix. It's just bit up in the air there for me to be paying $9.50 for a guy. I know he could go really big this week, but I think there's safer options in the end of the day. I'll throw one name out there. I think a Rosie's probably a better option. He's 6k cheaper, has a better run, although he does have a higher break even. So again, it's not picking up the player at their absolute minimum, but I expect him to turn that around pretty quickly, even this week. So Nick Martin, people that are jumping on him, again, he's probably pretty pricey for what you're looking for. But yeah, it's interesting to see that a lot of people are trading in defenders, where a lot of people are pretty set in their defense, and a lot of people are actually comfortable saying that their defense is even set with having a Yo at a D6 or something like that. So I think he's still a good pickup. He's going to be in the top 4 defenders, or at least top 6. Has been going pretty well and has a pretty good game up against Collingwood. He could even be a captain option as well if you're looking to go that way. Elliot Yeo, I said this last week, and I still probably maintain that same sort of appeal, that he's not the trade-in target for me. He's now getting up there in price. His break-even isn't that great anymore. He's obviously at injury risk, so I'd personally be looking to go elsewhere. He's hovering just outside the top 6, so try and find that extra cash and go to that top line. A day cost is only 100k more expensive than him, so if you don't have a day cost, get to him. And I think a Luke Ryan is probably rounds out the sort of the top 6 defenders, and I think he's a bit pricier and also has a really good run as well. So I probably prefer those two over a Yeo, but again, it's just price standpoint. I probably wouldn't be bringing in a Yeo, knowing that we know. A couple more here, just dipping under the 1k zone. So Liam Baker's an interesting one. I am in the standpoint that I think he could be quite good over the next sort of week, next sort of month and a half, where before sort of Taranto and the likes of Prestia come back in. He should have a lot of CBAs and can score quite well. Break-even's pretty good. So definitely in the mix. But I definitely don't think the ceiling's there for him. I think he's probably going to be a safe sort of 90 guy at the moment in those sort of next, say, month and a half. But yeah, definitely doesn't have the ceiling of some other guys. But I still think if you're keen on him, I think he's good. Run probably isn't as good as what others have been. Obviously, 2 harder ones the next couple fortnight. Even the Doggies is pretty hard. Brisbane have been up and down. Then he comes into an easy run after that. But you probably won't be holding him until then. But at the end of the day, what I did last year, just to reference back to, obviously, my Hilux winning year, was I brought in a Will Day this round. So paid about 700, very similar. I think it was 720 something K last year. Off after Will Day got suspended, brought him back in where his break even was in quite low. He was going to make some coin from there on out, and I could hold him through to his buy. So you got to look at some point when you're picking up guys at this standpoint. Do you expect them to be top 6? If not, then can you hold them through to the buy? And I think he probably falls in that category. You can hold him through to his buy. Moving on here, Biggie is probably my second favourite rookie to pick up if you already have a Garcia. I just like that roll down back, and I think he can score quite well. Overseas picked up the 47 on the weekend. In a game that they sort of kept taking on, they weren't really chipping it around as we've seen in the past. So maybe in games that they probably expect to lose, they'll chip it around a little bit more, and we can see a bit more of a ceiling score from him. So while he's under 300k, I still think he's a pretty good pickup. Zach Butters is another great trade-in target for me. I think he's probably one of the priority targets to bring in, given that his price point and his break-even's pretty good. Also has a pretty good run, similar to Rosie, but just given the break-even game, you probably pick up a Butters over a Rosie at the moment, but not many people. So great option there. Matt Roberts, people trading him in. That's an interesting take. I wouldn't be doing that, but sure. That is a very interesting one. I don't know who the hell's doing that, but sure. Bailey Dale, I'd like to see it again one more week, because I do think his potential is there to score consistently like this, and he is cheap, right? But again, I'm not looking to pick up a defender. But if you can pick up a cheap defender that's going to average, in the hundreds, that's only priced at 70. I think he's at 79. That's a great option. He's 20 points unders, and that can be a great pick. So I'd like to see it for one more week. Don't expect a 160 again, that's for sure. Ed Whitfield, very similar to sort of those top line guys, is max price, going backwards in price now with a high break even. So probably one I wouldn't jump on this week. Doesn't have the greatest run, so don't really see the appeal in picking him, unfortunately. You're really just doing it to cover other people. And that's probably where I'll stop. Maybe just talking about Errol Gordon. Obviously, a lot of people have been asking about him as a pretty popular trading target with people that with that coin. I do like him, and I do think he obviously has a huge ceiling and could go bonkers from here. We've seen what he did at the end of last year. Definitely underpriced. It's just we're waiting for that sort of Errol of old for him to really break out. So maybe that happens this week against Hawthorn. Much easier matchup. I don't think their run is super soft. Obviously, this week is nice, but 2 harder ones coming up, and even 3 harder ones coming up, and I think that's a nice one for a winger like him. So I do think he's only going to get better with the likes of Parker and Adams being swung into the midfield a bit more and freeing him up a little bit, and he can get sort of those more marks which we've seen in the past. And he just needs to stop being burnt by his teammates. I watched the game last week, and so many times he just is so open, but no one's willing to pass to him just because he's a bit more of an outside and they're looking to go direct. So I think it's just the likelihood that they've got Heaney in the midfield, so they've got a bit more speed in there, where last year we saw them a lot use Gordon on the outside and use McInerney on the other side and use sort of their wings to really shoot off and get their ball moving forward, whereas now they've got Heaney in the midfield. He provides a great marking target in the guts and can do that avenue as well. So they have really a 3-prong sort of avenue to attack the opponent. So it's not just relying on him anymore. So in saying that, I really do like him as a pickup. There's probably a couple other guys I prefer, like a Butters, who's probably who's 20k cheaper, pay up for a Rosie who's probably a little bit more, and there's a few other guys around that mark as well. And we'll probably stop it there for the most trade-in targets. There's not too many other relevant people there. So let's just summarise who I think are great trade-in targets. So we'll start with sort of those primo sort of price tag players. So I've got Butters at number 1. I really like him at his price. Great run coming up, and probably can have a few ceiling scores in there. He's right for the picking. Probably got Walsh at number 2. Obviously, price is right. Very similar to a Butters, exact same price actually. Break even's even better, but I just prefer the run of a Butters, just being a longevity pick rather than a Walsh, and obviously the injury risk is there, unfortunately. So I've put him at number 2. Very similar age profile. Number 3, I have Dacos. I think it's just the safety of him being that top line guy. The safety of him being a top line guy is not being valued enough. So he is a great trade-in target. I've got number 4. I've got Zorko. Number 4 I have Took. I quite like Took as a upgrade target. I'm also looking at him next week with a pretty good run. I know that people have been quite skeptical with these sort of 2 matchups in Darwin. What is it, TIO or something like that? So, but I'm personally not too worried about that. I think he can really relish in that sort of, and I think he can relish in that role and get quite a few tackles. So I think his price is pretty good, and he can improve quite well and quite quickly. And I've thrown in Zorko at number 5, just given, again, safety and top line guys. I think I haven't thrown Flanders in here, given that most people already have him. Sorry, I'm just trying to shut the dog up behind me. I've thrown Zorko in there at number 5 as a primo target, given that safety in the top line forward, in top 3 in his forward line. Probably another one I probably could have thrown in there. Obviously, I've spoken a lot about Rosie. Let's actually even just pull up players. So obviously, let's go all prices. How can I get price here? This is quite annoying. Stats. Let's have a look at stats. Here we go. So Steele is probably a really good option if you want to get up to him. Probably pretty pricey though. Strong is going in the wrong way, so I probably won't trade him in. Dunkley, again, probably hasn't shown huge amounts, but and probably doesn't have a great run, so I probably wouldn't be picking him up. Anderson had a pretty poor one last week, even though he does have a pretty good run to come. Like I said, you can get a took for nearly 130k cheaper or something like that, so that's probably where I'd be leaning towards. Heaney, if you didn't have him, it's a good option. Treloar is an interesting one. I've got a few questions about Treloar. I probably would be staying away just given the injury risk. Again, his hamstrings are made out of paper mache, so at any point he could be getting an injury, and then it's a very lonely area to be when he's sub 1%. If he cops an injury and you're on him, then it'd be a very lonely place and it would really hurt you. Whereas you can sort of hide behind the safety numbers sometimes, but if you're looking to make a bit of a difference and you're sort of behind the ball a little bit, maybe it's time to start searching for a bit of a pod that can really boost you up the ranks a little bit. It does have a great run. It's just the injury concern for me is a bit too much. But yeah, I do think he's quite a good option. Tom Green is going backwards. Probably wouldn't pick him up this week. Dawson, I've spoken about him. Rosie's spoken a lot about him as well. Probably could wait a week given his break even. His run really doesn't start until next week where he goes on the big ones. So those sort of next 4 are really good. That's what I'm targeting. I'm hoping to get Rosie in next week, so waiting the week. Bont, if you don't have a Bont, he's, looked better on the weekend, but probably not back to his best standards. Probably can still wait. Has a pretty tough matchup this week. Spoke about Golden. English, if you want to pick him up. Don't think many people are picking up a Ruckman at this point in time. He's still going backwards in price as well, so there's that. What was I up to? Wouldn't be picking up a Brayshaw, even though he does have the good buy. Just think his fluctuation in scores are probably a bit too much for me at this point in time. Butters, I spoke about him, he's my number 1. Walsh is my number 2. Probably wouldn't be picking up Nick Martin. Flanders I spoke about. Everyone should pretty much have him at this point. He's, 55% owned? Yeah, so most people have him. Zorko was number 5 for me, so happy with that. And probably just leave it there for all those guys. So quite a few guys there that you probably look to pick up if you want looking for that top line guy. But let's move into sort of those mid-price guys. So let's look at sort of 700k to 800k at this moment. So you've got the likes of McRae. You've got a lot of Kocius in there. I think he's 650. Sorry, I actually don't know who's actually in here. Where we're looking. So it's so annoying. I can't sort of make this easier to look at. But just listing off who I've got here. So I've got McRae at number 1 as a mid sort of price, underpriced primo. I think he can go back to his 90 ways. He's 11 points underpriced at that point. So, sorry guys, I need a quick drink. Hopefully that fixes my voice. Yeah, I think McRae's number 1. I think he's a great trading target this week if you don't have the cash to go to the top line guys. Has a great run. Looks to have settled in a role now, so he should be a bit better. I've got Taylor Adams as a 2, which he probably hasn't been spoken hugely about this week. Like I said, my initial reaction when I saw that I didn't have enough cash to go sort of those top line guys was get Taylor Adams in because he has the most upside in him, where once he starts getting those, back to his full fitness, he's getting full games, he could push, over 100 in that role. So it would be nice to be able to see that role first and obviously see how it's going to mix with the Sydney midfielders. Obviously, we sort of expect him to be sort of a 50-50 split forward and mid, where I still think he can score quite well there, where he will score 80 to 90 there, whereas if he's full-time midfield, then he can be anywhere to over 100 even. So I personally really like him as an option. I'm hugely watching him, but just given the injury risk, I'm probably just going good. I think I put McRae above him in that standpoint. Number 3, I had Lacocious. It's probably a bit of a generous 3 in my opinion, given that we saw that he got thrown forward in that in his last game in the last quarter. Obviously, that's not what we want to see. We want to see a consistent role, but he has gone back to back, so three 80s in a row. So his scoring potential is definitely there, and he does look pretty good down back. So hopefully that stays. But whether that him being thrown forward scares you off a little bit, I do think is pretty well priced at 650. Probably has a few points of upside there and can get you through to those mid-season buys for sure. Definitely isn't a keeper, but pricing in this range, you're not looking for a keeper as such. You're looking to get them to your buyers, as I said before. Number 4, I had Windhager. Obviously has a great role. I'll probably even bring him up. Probably should bring these guys as I go. Wind isn't that price. Here's that price. Scored the 105 last week, so his break even's in the right direction. I like the role he's in. He's presents plenty of value. Not too bad of a run. I think the next 2 are really good before coming up against tougher ones, but he's one of those guys. He doesn't really care about those sort of tougher ones, but he loves the cuddle, so can score quite well and did really look good on the weekend, so he probably should be shuffled up my board a little bit, and like I said, he's one that gets you through to the buyers. And number 5, I had Saligo, so really like the look of Saligo. It looks like he's solidified his role in that midfield, being sort of that 60% guy in there. Probably isn't super fantasy friendly, but I think if he can maintain sort of these high 20 disposals, if not pushing to 30s, he can put up some decent scores for us and make a lot of coin. So, but I definitely probably prefer a Windhager over a Saligo at this point in time, just given the run and the the price standpoint, I guess. They're very similar, but yeah. The role security is probably a bit more there, given that Crouch is out for sure. That being Brad Crouch, not Matt Crouch. So hopefully that's pretty much summarises who I think you should be getting in terms of mid-price primos. And then also touching on rookies, so my way of ranking rookies would be Garcia is absolutely number 1, then it's a massive gap between him and the second one. I've got Biggie at number 2, -6 break even, so he's going to make some coin. Hopefully he can put up some decent scores for you. Number 3, I had Jury. If you really want to look for a player, he's over 300k, so I probably wouldn't be paying that, but he still has a -9 break even, so you could ride his cash for probably the next 2 or 3 weeks if he stays in the team. Number 4, I had Latifi, however you want to say it. -19 break even, so he's going to make a bit of coin. Hopefully he can kick a few more goals in the upcoming weeks. I've probably thrown him a bit further down, given that Richmond do have quite a hard run, so maybe goals won't come as easy to him. But hopefully he can still get some decent marks and produce scores in other ways if he won't kick goals. So I think I don't mind him at 4. And then at 5, I've thrown a bit of a weird one in there in Riley Garcia. Priced a bit higher, I think it was at 330 or something like that. So, but has a break even of 18 and put a 66 together on the weekend. So if you're confident that he's sort of holding down that role, he's definitely shown a decent scoring potential. So one you could definitely look to pick up. But I think that'll sort of do it for today's episode in terms of most trade-in and trade-out targets. We'll sort of just quickly move on to what my trades are this week. And I've sort of alluded to it already that I'm going McKercher and I'm going a Williams, who's already in my utility spot, to Garcia, who's not a defender, Hugh Garcia, and I only have 780k, so who can I afford in that range? And for me, I'm just going to go with where is he? It's not a good sign that it's not there. Let's go to the last 3. He's not even there. Where is he? Have I got it set wrong? Either way, I'm going to McRae. Like his price, and I think he can push sort of those top 6 defenders. So ideally, he goes back to scoring those one he's scoring back in the 90s, and I can hold him for the year. Worst case scenario, I'm holding him through to his buys in say 5 or 6 weeks times while he does have a good run and can score quite potential. But absolute worst could be that he's demoted as a sub and even dropped from the side. So it's a bit of a risky play, but I don't mind him as such. I think he's it's a good pickup out of those guys. So I don't mind him. So let's see how the team is structuring up this week. So throw McRae there. He does slide behind Bonner, which looks very unusual, but that's just how good Bonner's been this week and shows you how cheap McRae actually is. Like I said, I'm looping Howes, and I'm also looping a Garcia first over a Dempsey. Can't really loop in the midfield, just given that more than likely Clark isn't dropped. He'll probably be the sub again. I don't see why they would change that. So that's how my trades are looking. There was a potential that I could have maybe held McKercher and traded a Dempsey instead. So using that additional cash to get up to a better primo, but I didn't really like anyone in that realm. So even if I show you here, it's not the easiest to show on here, but let's just say, can I make that trade? Okay. Let's quickly do this. So now if I go back to this trade and don't pick up McRae, I've got 874k. So who can I afford in that price as a midfielder or a forward? I would say probably just go mid forward. There's no one really here. I could go Took Miller and go a little bit early. So that's probably where I could go, but the safety isn't there, and being close to that sort of top 6 to 8 sort of line. I would have really liked Dacos to pick him up if I could, but I think I was like 13k off of him. Let's just type him in here. 12k. So yeah, if I had the additional 12k, that's definitely what I would be doing if you were in that same boat. So don't be afraid just because you've got some don't be afraid to jump off a guy early to use that additional cash to get to that player you want. So yeah, that'd be my advice there. So this is how we're sort of structuring up for the week. Feeling pretty confident. I don't know. I feel like I've set myself up pretty well for the best 22s. I know a few other teams are in better positions where they're sort of fielding Yo at D6. I also probably could field Yo at D6, but yeah. And but yeah, at the end of the day, I think my team, sitting with 5 rookies, team value is not too bad. Feel like I don't have too many mid prices that it's going to hurt me too much, and I actually like what they can produce. Especially Yo's probably not even shouldn't be classed as a mid price, but I am currently. Bonner, he can go quite big against his old teammates in Port Adelaide. So I think he has probably a bit bigger of a week this week. So anyone that's sort of thinking of trading him out, I personally wouldn't be. And then he also comes across a couple of easy options in North and Hawthorn. So those are pretty juicy matchups for him. So he could be able to hold for the next sort of 3 weeks, in my opinion, while we sort of jump off the Fishes, the Fifes, and continue to upgrade these rookies, because a lot of them are maxing out in price. You've got Roberts, who's probably another 2 weeks. You've got 40 points difference there between his even and his break even. Same with Sharp, can probably go before a Roberts there. Definitely not looking to jump off these 2 boys just yet. But then you've got Howes on the bench. You've got I've got a Campbell there as well. Garcia's only just come in, and obviously bring in like a Dempsey. So that's where I'll probably leave it. Let's just quickly go through my captain options for the week. So I think there's plenty of captain options this week. I've sort of written down 10 names, but I probably could have filled out an even dozen. But my number one this week, probably looking through here, I've got Rowan Marshall against Port Adelaide. So bit of a skeptical one, I'd say, given that if Sweet is in, then maybe it's not the best one to go into. Obviously, Soldo's been super easy to score against. but maybe the change with having Sweet and Soldo in there at the same time could be a bit of a tougher matchup. But at the end of the day, he did score 159 against them last week. Obviously, that was against a Teakle, not even a last set. Obviously, a very different matchup. So, yeah, I think that's a pretty good option. Probably should actually gone back and looked at what Marshall scored against a Soldo last year, but unfortunately didn't pick up on that. But I think he's a great option this week at number 1. Number 2, I have Zach Merritt. He scored a 146 against Collingwood last year in this Anzac Day game. It was in round 24. He didn't play the Anzac Day weekend, unfortunately. So I only have one sample size for Merritt, but I've thrown him in there just with the scoring history. I don't think there's too much concern there with him moving out of the midfield in that last quarter last week. I don't think that will continue. He's much better as an inside mid and definitely gets the praise he deserves in there. Number 3, I had Max Gawn. Max Gawn. I think he's a great VC option tomorrow night. We've seen what other ruckmen have been able to do against what's his name? Anand Curvis, and they've also brought in a Naismith. So I think that only helps him get more of the ball because Naismith is not a restrictive ruck by any means. So should give him more tap-outs and should give him more disposal. So I think that helps him a lot. He scored the 119 he scored the 119 against Nankervis in 2022. Unfortunately didn't play Nankervis at all last year, given that Nankervis was out for the year during both times where they played each other. So bit disappointing we don't have the data there. Number 4, I've gone Nick Dacos in the same game. I think he is a good option. Scored the 140 last year in this Anzac Day, so loves the medals, similar to Parrish. So I think he'll stand up in this game and do quite well. I don't think he'll cop too much attention. Maybe someone stands next to him maybe a Parrish goes to him. Probably not Merritt. I wouldn't think he does that. Durham probably goes to a Degoe. And that's probably where I see it starting at. So I don't think he'll cop too much attention. I think he can go big. And I've got number 5 at being Dawson. He scored a 136 against North last year. But I've thrown him down there just a little bit with the concern of his role. So I think those guys are pretty good captain options this week. I've also considered Steele. He scored a 128 against Port Adelaide last year. So you'd probably argue he's in better form now than he was last year, so could be a good option. Walsh, I think he'll be good this week against the easiest matchup in the Cats, so he's probably a good one. Bont, where is he playing? He plays here. Is a tougher matchup in terms of obviously fixture, but he scored a 148 and a 116 against Freo last year, so probably one that could have made my top 5, but just given his recent form, I'm personally probably just avoiding that for now. I'd like to see him really break out and become the Bont that we all know he can be. Sarong was also in my considerations. Same game, scored a 116 and 134 against them last year. You'd probably argue he's in better form this year, so could be a good one to fall into as a late game. And had to throw Heaney in. He's been so good. One person I didn't throw him was a Sheasel, even though I think he's going to go really well. Again, I don't know why I don't trust Sheasel with my captaincy. Maybe just a concern with the whole moving forward. He's got maybe thrown in the midfield. You'd hate to see that have your C on him and he gets thrown midfield or forward. So it's just a bit of a flag for me. Maybe wait a week and target a more friendly matchup for him. So that's my captains. Hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of what I'm doing. I'm looking to probably go Gawn into Marshall. Pretty stock standard. I did play around with going a VC on a Merritt, but probably just leaning towards Gawn more. That he's had the rest. He's got a pretty good matchup. whereas I think it could be pretty tough for Merritt, and there's a bit of uncertainty with his role if he moves forward again. I think I can probably get a better ceiling score from a Gawn, and he has shown that in the first month of footy, where he's gone 149, 146, and 137. So hopefully we can expect another big one from him, and a lot of people will be on him and sorts our captains out for the week. But then I've gone into Marshall, who had a poorer week last week, so expecting a bit of a bounce back. So that's how I'm thinking. But I'll leave it there for today. Hopefully everyone smashes it this week. It's a bit of a strange week, obviously, with the fixture being so early on. Obviously, it's Tuesday night, which is just ridiculous to say. So we got a game on tomorrow night, then we got 2 Thursday, 1 Friday, and then obviously the weekend games. So bit of advice: stay vigilant with your fantasy this weekend. I know a lot of people are probably going travelling with the Anzac Day on the Thursday, taking work off Friday. I'm personally doing the same thing. So still try and keep up to date with all the fantasy relevant, keep on social media if you can. If there's any late outs, you really want to be on top of it as much as possible. I know, don't try and ruin your weekend about it, but just try and keep near your phone as much as possible for sure, as it can definitely hurt your season if you miss one of those little things. It's just the unfortunate cruelty of this game. It's a bit unforgiving when if you don't watch the game. So I'll leave it with that. So hopefully everyone has a good weekend. Hopefully they can improve their rank and have a big game, and hopefully we can all increase in the ranks now that the best 18 are done. I'll leave you with it now. All right, bye.